Okay, I'm just doing a fun video real quick of kind of going through my interpretations of a few claims about Christianity that I hear that I like to shoot down in regards to people that feel like they're poking holes or uh, reasons not to believe, and I guess that kind of makes me a Christian apologist, which I think is unique because it's like we're apologizing for. Uh, a belief system that we feel strongly towards that others don't, and then we can't find out why people are not as moved as we are. And it seems a little strange, but it's also foretold in the very book that we proclaim as truth, because Jesus says that you are unable to believe unless He has allowed you to, and that in itself is a blessing. And so, but when we go through these things logically, it's like no one is going to actually disagree with anything Jesus says morally. It's the epitome of playing a video game and only choosing the most virtuous option every single time, no matter what. And that is Jesus' story when you break it down to its base point, its base principle. And he specifically even addresses this as affirming that he did not come to change the word or tradition. He just bring clarity to what the commandments meant and what the purpose of those commandments were, and how not seriously we took them. And then you can see that now as someone in the future looking back, it's like, okay, the Ten Commandments, they're pretty vague, but if you were to take them seriously to the point of like, um, there's a point that a Christian would take them, which is that like, okay, if you don't do these things, you're going to hell, and then on top of that, your life will be miserable every single time you are unable to follow these. And then Jesus is really proclaiming that the miracles that could happen from just following the word, the scripture that He gives, the Ten Commandments, as well as His new commandment of love each other to your full heart, to the point where even if they're subjugating you, you're gonna do what they want to to the best of your ability, and more than you would even want to do, more than they ask, because that in itself has potential power to transform them. And we've seen evidence of this. Yet even then, even with that evidence, people find it difficult to actually do these things. And in my life, I've experienced this where I knew what Jesus would want me to do, and yet I find it difficult to do those things. And yet, the times where I am successful and pushing myself to follow what would Jesus do, the equivalent of a miracle does happen. And the situation works out best, even if it doesn't. It seems impossible at the time. And that's the whole point: is that our lack of faith is what brings about the pain and suffering that we have. And then there's those will say, "Oh, well, the children get cancer and this and that." Um, you're assuming, one, that there is no afterlife, which is of course huge, because it's like, well, we have no evidence for it, so why would I believe that? And yeah, that's true. There's no evidence other than the fact that um, this life began from basically nothing, or God Himself. If you were to follow your logic, the non-believer's logic, it's nothing. And if you follow the believer's logic, then it's the Creator. In which case, this is already a gift. It's already given with grace. You're not owed. You don't. You're not owed anything. You're given this life, and you're given a role and a chance to do things, and it's already a gift. And then on top of that, even though you are a sinner, even though you are a bad human being, you can be forgiven. And that's everybody, because nobody's good. We all like to put this idea that like we're good because I don't do bad, I don't murder people, so I'm good, or I don't hurt people when I can, so I'm good, or I donate, or I do a few good things, so I'm good. And like, that's not what good is. And if it was, it would diminish what good is for that to be true. So that's the humility that we need to have, and that's what the understanding we need to have. And if you know God, and if you actually pray and are touched by God Himself in your belief, which can happen if you allow it. Now, some people are going to say that's impossible, whatever, but just give it a shot. what could hurt, right? And when he actually does speak to you and you feel the touch of God through your body and it changes your perspective on things in your life and makes you want to pursue, a different style of life and really trusting in what Jesus talked about, which is all really about selfless love and putting others ahead of yourself, and to stop complaining about your suffering, because as much suffering as you've had, you have to remember that while God isn't subject to the debilitation of suffering like we are, he still experiences it for us and with us. And that's what the whole point of Jesus' story really is that he's not just some observer creator, from a distant land. He's actively participating and is within us, and also actively suffers everything that we suffer, because he's capable of doing that. And why not? And the reason for the whole faith thing, why we need to have faith, is because this is part of the growing process. I mean, if you don't have faith, if you don't trust, then what does that even make you in terms of a human being? You don't need that would make you self-righteous. That would make you believe that you are even capable of doing any of these things. And to be honest, none of us meet that criteria, because none of us build anything by ourselves. It's just for us to do anything. It requires a civilization of people. A single man is incapable of really doing anything, especially if he's in a vacuum of like nothing else prepared. He's starting in the woods and he has no materials. The farthest you're going to get is being able to do a campfire, maybe being able to make some basic tools. But, other than that, it's only through the very luck, or as it is, God's guidance, as I would say, that leads to us building a civilization that can even develop the technology and the cooperation that we have now. And it's only because of the tenets that Jesus taught. Now, people can say, oh, other religions taught these things, and, all of these things, are possible. But that very message being taught to those people could be God if it's the same message. And all of the civilizations that teach the false teachings, like Satan or worship other deities, they all eventually fall. Now, the only ones that haven't so far are India and like China. They worship all kinds of like Shiva and all that. But at the same time, that's kind of shines a light to the difference, because you see those countries and they're unable to provide in a level that, say, America can, which is mostly more Christian and more believing in Jesus. Now, I don't have no problem with the Muslims, because they believe in Jesus too, but they just unfortunately have been told to not worship him as what he who he is, which is the Yahweh, I am the one, and they like to say that he's just a prophet, which is pretty crazy, because in the Bible it's like, and this kind of proves that he's God, because I always found this as one of my main reasons why I believe in God, is that only God could literally tell you that what you are not going to believe despite the evidence, and you will not believe it, even though there's literally right in front of you. It's like if someone casted a spell, an illusion on you, and said you like this person, even though you didn't like that person 2 seconds ago, but they cast that spell on you, you like that person, and even though you saw him do that spell on you, you don't react to it, and you still like the person that he's telling you to like with that magic. That'd be the equivalent. It's like, okay, if you saw that happen, you'd be like, holy crap, that's magic. There's no way. But the Muslims, they're written about. Any prophet who come to speak words that go against the very words that I have spoken to you now, he's a false prophet. He's a liar. And he goes against my word. He's not from me. But he will still be used. And that's the divinity of Christ. The power of Christ is that even though this will happen, he's calling it out that it would happen. it's going to be used to bring the Muslims to us. Like right now, the Muslims they have the most numbers, they have this huge population, and the Muslims think, oh, we got this in the bag. We're going to take over the world according to projections. And God's power is that the meek shall win. And the Muslims, they won before because they were like that. They were very nice. They took Jesus' teachings seriously, and they were about forgiveness. They weren't about slaughtering, subjugation, and so they did that to the Romans. They took over, and then it became. Now we're dealing with it now, where like the Christians have to learn to adopt that. Like, okay, we're not going to be violent, and the Muslims have become violent, and yet we're going to be able to take all of their followers just because we're gonna be able to have this discussion in the open and the truth and be like, look, historically we can go back to the past and say, hey, we made a mistake here. We were being against Jesus' word. We were doing what we wanted to do, not what Jesus would have wanted us to do. And because of that, we lost. And then the Muslims started winning. But then the Muslims started becoming more violent, and now they're losing because they became violent. And the Jews are the same thing. They also become violent, and they start losing whenever they become violent. As is always the case. But at the same time, Israel has promised to the Jews, so they will cast themselves onto the stone and destroy themselves, which has actually happened. We had the 5-day war with Israel that happened. We have the Palestine-Gaza thing happening. And it's because both sides are choosing violence, both sides are losing. And the same thing with, America and everything else. So as soon as we start realizing that only with Christ's teachings can we even succeed as a nation and as a people, then that's really where we need to be at. And science is trying to come in the way of that. A lot of things try to say, oh, we don't need, Christ, we don't need God. We just could take his principles, and then it goes back to Jesus' teachings. And this is so cool about it, is that he's the good shepherd. And that, anyone comes to you with these words, you shall know him by the fruits of his labor. I mean, the fruits that he bears, but also that the good shepherd doesn't run. Jesus Christ says he doesn't run. And so when the shepherd will be struck, he's willing to die for what he spoke and what his teachings are. And the same thing has to be for us as well. And the problem is within that, we have these people who take the teachings, but they're not willing to die for the teachings. They say, oh yeah, we need peace and love and all of these things, but at the same time they make backhand deals and we're willing to trade lives for money, or things like that. And so without the foundation of Christ as to why you're willing to embrace these ideas and these concepts, these principles, it'll fall short. It'll basically be an imitation. It's like a cheap imitation that has no foundation. And that's really what he's speaking about when he says Peter, the foundation that he's talking about is like believing in these words is one thing. Knowing these words is another thing. But having faith in these words is the strongest thing, because that's saying that regardless of what happens to me in my being or the beings that I care about, following the principles of Christ is so more important than all of that I'll give it all of that. And the beautiful thing about God is with his grace, when you're willing to do that, you don't have to. And it's one of those things where it's like you're kind of being tested, and we're all falling short because we all want to go our own way or do our own thing or say our suffering testifies that it can't be real and that we shouldn't have to go through this or all of these things. And it's like, you're right, you shouldn't. And you can be judged by your own words. And that's why I would say be careful, because with Jesus, he says that all the time. It's like you will be judged according to your own words, your own measurements, and your own saying. So when you judge God with these things, that's how you will be judged. And so you think it's unfair for you to even exist, and you won't. And he can make that happen. And so the only people that will remember that you ever existed, will be the people that go to heaven from here. But God made a promise to us that heaven is so magnificent It's not that he will delete our memories, because a lot of people misinterpret that. They think, "Oh, he's going to erase our memories. We're not going to remember this world." And they say that when he comes to the new heaven, but that's not what Jesus said. Or that's not what God said about erasing people's memory. No, he was saying that the experience was going to be so magnificent, that things were going to be so great in heaven, and that all the tears would be wiped away, that we won't even remember this world. Not because it'll be erased from our memories, but because we would have been moved so past it that we won't think back to it. Now that's an amazing promise that God has made to us, and it's the reason why we should have faith in God, because He's already proven to us everything else. Everything else He said, the world is full of food, nutrients, resources, and it's us who's mismanaging it. A lot of people want to say climate change, or the government this, saying this, war, and all this. But these are all man-made disasters. We have nuclear power plants that can power the entire world on green energy for the next 1,000 years. Uranium is one of the most abundant resources on the planet, actually. And the only reason why we don't is because we use it for our military instead. The United States has, 68, almost 70 coming soon, nuclear-powered vessels, some of them with twin turbo nuclear reactors as engines. Each of these being able to power 100,000 homes every year for 25 years. So we could mass produce these if we wanted to. Like, let's not pretend like this is hard. We could build it in the center of underground of every city. These don't explode. These aren't the movies. In reality, nuclear reactors are just a reaction that can be contained. And if the reaction gets out of hand, it gets too hot. With modern nuclear reactors, with multiple fail-safe stages, none of that is a concern anymore. This is not Chernobyl. This is not the 1950s. This is a 3 Mile Island in the 60s. This isn't Fukushima, which is a facility that with no funding, lack of maintenance, all because of budget constraints and the fear of nuclear in itself. But you could have fear of nuclear, but that just means that you don't fear climate change, because it's one or the other. And if you want to pretend like solar is going to work, or wind, or any of these other green energies that they supposedly keep saying, it's not green if it requires rare earth minerals, because then you have to dig those minerals, which you're not counting in part of the equation of climate change. And it's so funny because you're just offsetting it. You're just saying, okay, well, we'll dig this up in China and India, and they're the ones that are doing the emissions. It's like, no, you're the one getting the stuff, so it's your emissions. Just because you don't do the legwork to track it, that's data manipulation, and everyone can see it. But people who don't look into it obviously don't look into it, and that's another problem. If you don't look into it and you just like to say things that you were told, I got a problem. I got news for you. I guarantee you, 90% of the time, if you look into it, it's a little bit more nuanced than what you thought, and you need to actually go back and investigate it and have it summarized for you, because otherwise you're just going to be believing whatever they tell you, because it's easy to manipulate data when nobody's looking at the data. They do it all the time, and I promise you, they do it all the time. I can name numerous examples of studies that don't say what they said in the headline, but at the same time, they go on as if it does. And then at the very end of the article, they go, hey, by the way, not really. And we're just coming up with our summarization and taking the data where we want it to go. But that would be one clean example right then and there. Climate change, they swear up and down that we need to go green with technologies that are not green, and technologies that actually have to be replaced every 5 to 10 years. That's what the estimates are. Their factual data shows 2 to 3 years. The windmills are steel, crafted in China. You have to dig for the materials. You have to, make it steel, and then you have to ship it over here. That's all using fossil fuels to do that. Every step of the process: coal, traveling, gas, all of this. So you're not counting that. You don't count it. Look into the climate change data. They don't consider that part of the emissions, because it's not a production of the energy. And that's again the way they talk to you about things. They tell you about things is they kind of lawyer speak you into falling for whatever they have to tell you. But nuclear energy, in that sense, you build the concrete base once, you build the uranium rods once, and there you go. You got it for 20 years, as long as you have a steady output, which is what you want to do, especially if you're going to do AI chips, into computer graphics cards and all these other things that need this energy in order to generate the future that we're trying to build, where we're going to have freaking holograms everywhere, maybe robots that have to be charged. Honestly, it depends on where science is now. In regards to that, I don't know. I'm just seeing what I'm seeing as it comes out. I think it's going to be awesome. I think this is going to be great. It's kind of the evolution of what uh, God described as heaven initially, because in the initiality of heaven, he says he builds it, and he built the robots that were basically angels. And then at one point, he gets bored and he gives them sentience. Um, if time is repeating that, which I think it is, because we're made in his image and we're kind of going through exactly what God went through, we are basically at the stage where we're going to create new life. And that seems to be the story that we've been given and the story we're telling now. And that won't be our only story, at least for us believers. We get to go and see the new heaven and see the new stories and the new worlds that are going to exist. But in people stuck here that think this is the best that it's ever going to be, that's another thing about God's glorious power here. The worst life that you could have is now. The worst things could be is now, because it's only going to get better. Just like with AI, it's only going to get more powerful. It's only going to get more better the more time and work we put into it. And that's what God's saying. That's what God is saying with us. In the beginning, life was horrible. And the more work he gave into us, the stronger and better we became. And he created time just so that we can experience that. Because for him, everything was instant. He's already seen how perfect everything is at the end. And he created it this way so that we can experience it, because he experiences it in a different way. And he wants to experience it with us. But we won't allow him to be here because, unfortunately, way too many people are pissed off, and as soon as they see him, they're going to kill him. That's usually what happens. I mean, it's already happened so many times. It's not even just Jesus. It's literally anyone with a message of, like, let's get together and not be assholes to each other. You got Martin Luther King killed, Malcolm X killed. They almost killed Gandhi. They didn't kill him. They killed all those other people, peaceful people. You know, even anyone that tries to go beyond or even say anything like Christ, it's just gonna not end well for them usually, especially if they're in politics or if they have any kind of control or power. And then they don't want anything. That's another thing. If they can't be bought, blackmailed, or subjugated in some way, then immediately they must be removed. And that's just typically how it goes. But it's a pretty good video. I feel like 22 minutes of me going on and tangent and kind of getting my thoughts out there. Hopefully, I continue to do this and it actually recorded sound.